Awesome, right. Okay, so we're a little bit behind. Partly my fault, I guess. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is we're going to go through, we're going to build our rocket, we're going to build our rocket to have animation, fly, so on and so forth. We will get to a stage where you can space bar and spawn rockets from spaceships and fire rockets upwards. Then we'll go for a break, so we're supposed to have a break now, but then we'll do this bit, this will supposed to take that long. Then we'll go for like a bit of a long break, like a speed break or so. Then we'll bring in asteroids as targets and blow them up and stuff like that. That's probably where we'll get to today. So basically, yeah, what we're aiming for, so that's cool. So we've got a spaceship. It's not that interesting though, it's just basically, you can call it space simulator or spaceship simulator or something. I could change the spaceship to be Flappy Bird, flying in space, sucking or something. Yeah, it's really easy to get the Flappy Bird sprite sheet, by the way. Yeah. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to build up a rocket. So that's our spaceship. We're going to put that aside. So what we're going to do with the rocket is we're going to make one rocket, and we're going to duplicate it 1,000 times. We'll duplicate it as many times as possible. Every single game in the existence of all time has done this in some way. So Tetris, for example, there wasn't really someone who built up, like, for example, again, let's say Mario. Okay, so for example with Mario, you've got coins. So rather than what people have done, where they hire an intern like makes a coin sprite, and then makes a script for the sprite, and then like has an animation, and then an audio, and they build this quite complex object. Then they have to do it again and again and again. What they instead did is they created one coin, set it up as like a master like coin saved in their project folder, and then by code just duplicated it 1 billion times whenever they needed it. So this saved them a lot of time and effort. A good example of how this has been used is in Legend of Zelda. So for example, in Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, you fight like lizard men with armor, and it's one lizard man for the entire game. But what they do is they spawn the lizard man, they customize the lizard man's shields and their weapons and their colors and stuff. So that way, they make one lizard man, they wrote the code to then randomly change things about lizard man, and they made a whole army of lizards just from one character. So the artists are happy, the programs are happy because it took a day, they've instantly made 1,000 unique different characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one rocket. This rocket's going to have lots of information, lots of properties and stuff like that. Turn it into like a clone, like a master rocket we can duplicate. Then we'll duplicate it. We'll have a little match space. Every match space from thousands of rockets will appear and fly and dominate the whole screen. So we'll do that, and then we'll go for red and have the asteroids. Cool. So yeah, let's make some rocket coins. Cool, so go back to Unity. So we've got a bit, so let's make some rockets. So we're going to make one rocket, we're going to duplicate it by code thousands of times using one line of code, which is really awesome and cool. So what I'm going to do is we're going to sort of move away from the spaceship. This is going to be a separate entity to the spaceship, and build up a rocket from scratch. This is going to be super, super easy. Someone else is bringing this in. So, potato chip to the side. So let's bring in some rockets. So we can bring in some rockets very, very easily, but we need to look at our rockets first. So I'm going to go to a spreadsheet. Have a look at my spreadsheets. Let's get rid of spaceships. Let's get rid of background space. You'll notice that we have the rocket spreadsheet as well. Let's open that up. So if I select the rocket spreadsheet, you'll notice that it looks just like that. It's basically it's a series of frames, and it's cycling through those frames to make the flames kind of like waft side to side. That stops it from looking super boring, just going up. It actually has some animation in the base of it. So what we can do here is we can say, go to the rocket, scroll to the top right hand corner. So we select the rocket. So like we did with the spaceships, we changed it from a single sprite to multiple sprites. We can select the sprite mode of single, toggle it to multiple. So yeah, single to multiple. We have that. So now we have a single to multiple. Click apply. So now what we have is we have our rockets who are going to import those multiple sprites as opposed to a single sprite. Cool. And then click the sprite editor. Okay, pop quiz. Why would automatic slicing not work?
No space.
Everyone's just like, this. Yeah, everyone's really excited. Yeah, it's basically, so I purposely went through and took the rockets. They were originally, I had 1 pixel gap, and I purposely took that out. So I could use the automatic slice, that would still work. So if I automatically slice it, that whole image is now one sprite because there's no spaces. So what I could do is I could, for example, select like the slice. I could then like cut out slices like this and go, okay, let's slide one rocket right there, one slice of ball. I could do that, or I could use grid slicing, because grid slicing, what it does is it kind of makes a cookie. It cuts things out. So I switch to grids. We have a grid here. For example, we have a pixel size option here. So the pixel size is basically how big each slice is going to be. So if you're a 2D artist, and for example your character Mega Man is like 100 pixels by 100 pixels, you would write here 100 by 100. And what it does is it cuts out 100, 100, and it goes stamp, 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 cut, cut, cut. It then goes to the next line, cut, 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 next line, cut, 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 cut. Basically goes through and cuts all the different pieces into different shapes. So for here, I'm going to set the pixel size for how big the rocket is. So that way it's going to cut one rocket, move along, cut, 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 and carry on going. Yeah. Cut, cut, cut. Cool. So what I need to do now is I need to find out how big my rocket is. Okay. So 96 by 33. I remember my rocket size now. So what I can do is I can go to grids. I set up the X values, how wide each of my frames are. So a good example of this is like when I was in school, I didn't like science at all. So what I used to do is in the corner of my textbook, I'd draw like a stick man running and jumping over stuff and swimming and then like vaulting over things. And then my teacher got really annoyed because I basically defaced the entire biology book to make a character run and jump. This is what's going to happen. It's going to basically cycle through these different sprites and swap out the frames. And we're going to play around with that. So yeah, pixel size. So for example, when I did it in my little textbook in the corner, I made sure that it was within like 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters in the corner. I know most of you probably did the same, but you're not going to do it.
12 on X, 33 on the Y. 12 on X and 33 on the Y.
Okay. 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12, 33, yeah, cool. So 12, 33, so what it's going to cut, it's going to say 12 across, 33 down, so it's going to be like that. It's going to cut, cut, bang, cut, 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 across. So we do that. So let's see the magic. Take a slice. Boop. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So grid, 12 by 33. So we're going to use grid again for like the explosion. That's a bit later on. But yeah, 12 by 33. So for example, with Mega Man, he was like 100 by 100, for example, and then we were able to cut it automatically. Cool. Right. What else should we do? What else should we do? So now that that's finished, what we need to do is we then need to apply. We need to confirm that we are very happy with this is how our model works. So we're going to apply. And what you'll notice here is that we have our cycle of rockets. And it's going through. I've got each of my frames of my animation. So it's quite different from this spreadsheet, because this spreadsheet is basically pulling in lots of different types of sprites, lots of different types of designs, whereas this one's the same one, but it's just we've got a series of frames. It's like if you took a movie clip or a GIF or something like that, you break it down into different frames, this is what you get. You get a stop by stop by stop type thing. Like a little excitement through. So what we now need to do is we now need to say, these are all separate individual frames. Now, rather than us taking one rocket, dragging and dropping it, and then being like, okay, cool, take another one, drag and drop it, for example, we need to take all of these frames and turn them into an animation clip. They need to be a clip of data that says, go from this frame to this frame to this frame to this frame, and so on and so forth. So, this is really difficult to do. What you do is you select the first rocket, hold shift, select the last rocket. So basically you selected the entire sequence of rockets, so we selected the whole sequence of frames. And ready for some magic? Right? Can anyone guess what I'm about to do? Oh yeah. Select it, let go. It's going to say to me, what do I want my animation to be called? This is very, very, very important. You don't want to call your animation new animation. You don't want to call your animation untitled. You don't want to call your animation rocket. What you need to do is you need to call your animation exactly what it does. And if you don't do this now, basically you'll have lots of problems. So basically, I'm going to save my animation as rocket flying. That's exactly what it does. I wouldn't even name my rocket just flying as itself, because what if I had Flappy Bird in my rocket? Both of them are flying animations and kind of okay. So whenever I do any animation, I always call the first one what is being animated, and the second term basically like what it's doing. So old man walking or young man running, for example. Young man walking. There's two different types of animation. So once that's done, click save, and a whole bunch of stuff has happened. The first thing that's happened is we now have a rocket in our scene. This rocket sitting there like that. It looks beautiful. Another thing that's happened is it's added the rocket to our hierarchy. So you can notice we've got our camera, background, potato, rocket, things like that. The next thing you'll notice, for you those that are eagle-eyed, is basically it's added a rocket _0 object here, and rocket flying here. So those who used Unity before, can you point out what those two things are? Does anyone take a guess? Guesses are cool.
The animator and the animation.
Fantastic. Your prize is free biscuits.
Yes.
Cool. So the rocket flying is the clip of data to say this rocket is going to be flying, or for example, platform moving. It's a platform moving left and right, or coin spinning on the spot. Basically, it's a little clip of data to say, do this particular animation, do this particular action. This is a controller. So the controller basically controls all the animations on an object. So for example, you think of someone like, I'm going to use Lara Croft as an example. Lara Croft doesn't just have one animation. She's got hundreds of animations. She's got animations of her running, jumping, sliding, diving, shooting, climbing, locking the guy in the fridge. Did anyone else do that Tomb Raider? Like you have the freezer and you lock your butler in the freezer. Everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah. She's got stuff of her driving cars. She's basically got a billion different types of animation. So what we need to do, or how Unity basically handles this animation, Tomb Raider also made Unity, like how it handles the animation is you have all your clips of Lara diving, fighting crocodiles, whatever. And then you have a controller to control which one is currently playing. So you don't want to play two animations at the same time. Basically, you want to have one animation playing, another animation playing, and basically pass them. So the controller is kind of like, okay, you think of a class of students, the controller is like the teacher, basically telling the students what to do and stuff like that. So we've got a controller, and we have control clips. Cool. One thing you'll notice is if you select a rocket, and then you go over to your inspect on the right-hand side, so your description of rocket, we have transform, we have a sprite renderer, we also have your animator on here. So the animator is basically a thing that handles your animation in Unity. Tomorrow I'm going to talk more about the animator, and I'm going to demo more things about the animator. I'm basically going to show you how you can take in a rig of a character who's got these animations, and then take that rig, take the animations and put it on something else. So I have like a random dude with spiky hair run around. I'm going to take his animations and put it on a teddy bear and have a teddy bear run around. So yeah, everyone's super excited for that. So yeah, it's just going to show you can take one animation clip and place it onto a different object. Think of a game like Skyrim, for example. That has like 1,000 different characters. They all have exactly the same sort of animation. Just sitting. But yeah, so yeah, you're going to have a character that runs around and does backflips, he waves, and then the teddy bear's going to do backflips and waves and stuff. I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up. But for now, we're going to animate a rocket, so baby steps. Yeah, cool, we have this character. So what you notice is the animation controller, it's got the controller rocket on it. It has a controller to control the animations on the rocket. And this is going to show you something very horrifying. First time I saw this, I was very scared. Okay, so put your hand up if you're terrified by that. You can be honest. Okay, so everyone's incredibly brave. Oh, okay, cool. So can you tell me exactly what that is?
Directed what?
Pardon?
Directed what?
Directed what?
Diagram.
Diagram. I've heard of spider web, I've heard lots of things about this. A mess is what I call it.
Communication.
Pardon?
Component communicating.
Yes. Cool. So what this is it's a full animation controller for a character. It's a full system. So for example, we have this character here. The character will have lots of different clips, lots of different states, lots of different nodes. Like running, jumping, fighting, crying, eating a sandwich, eating biscuits, whatever it may be, drinking Red Bull, distributing Red Bull, stuff like that. So one thing you'll notice is that you can build up in Unity you can build up a full animation system like this. So for example here, each of these is an animation clip. So this is idle. So idle will play until something happens. So for example, idle, actually let's go. Let's find a good one. Not like this. Okay, cool. This is really good example. Okay, so we have here an animation system. So in Unity, you can use this animation system to control when certain animations are playing. For example, you don't want your character to jump, and then in mid-air they then like pull out a sandwich, eat a sandwich, and they're kind of like floating mid-air with a sandwich. You want to handle that they only eat a sandwich when they're standing on the ground, when their feet are on the ground. So what you need to do is you kind of need to handle which animation is playing when. The animation controller does this for you. It handles which animation is playing and transitions it when you need to. So for example here, that's an animation clip, that's a clip, that's a clip, that's a clip, that's it. So for example, one of these is going to be like rocket flying clip, and then we're going to transition rocket flying clip to rocket explode. Aha! This is where the magic happens. So you've got idle here, so you think, okay, think of this as like Lara Croft. So she's in idle, she stands there, she kind of like doesn't really do much, and she's in idle, and she sort of stands there and swings her arms, and complains, and all this stuff. And what you'll notice is that we have a pathway, we have a transition saying go from idle to slash. And this is a gateway. This gateway only happens when you do something in code. So for example, idle will happen if you just stand there. And then when the player pushes A, which may be slash, Lara Croft, what it will do, the animator will do, is it will say go to the animator, click A is for the push, transition to slash, and then Lara Croft will slash. And what you can then do is you can then get this transition back automatically. So if idle's just going to loop forever, push A, it will then go down this path, slash, and then go back to idle. So that way it slashes, goes back to idle. You can also make it go and walk and come back. So here, for example, it's going to say when you push A, play this, and then go back to here. Here it's more like a turn on to turn off type thing. So when you idle, you push forward, for example, or change the axis, and the axis is greater than 0, you're going to then go walking. When you take your finger off the axis, you're going to transition back. So kind of think of these as like gateways that you have permission to go down. So for example, when you go from idle, you're going to transition to walk. Walk can transition to run. That way you don't have Lara Croft standing here and then she's just sprinting suddenly. That way you don't have Lara Croft here and then she slashes and then runs. So she slashes and then goes to like sprinting. That way you can actually transition things slowly when they make sense. I'm not sure why Lara Croft would roll, but yeah. Yeah, so for example you can walk back. Also the controller stops animation effects overlapping. So it stops Lara from walking and walking backwards at exactly the same time. So she's like doing that. So the controller basically says this one's playing, transition to this one happens, this happens. The controller kind of like holds this background stuff. It's not that interesting. Well, I find it interesting, it's not a big deal. But for example, it's interesting that this is the background happening behind all the characters and animations and stuff in like, for example, Monument Valley or like Back Higgies and stuff like that. And then what you can do is then you can link up these clips and then do the visual end. So we're going to set the back end, the back end node system, then do the visual end, so the bit where you make the rockets spin and glow red and do this cool shit. So yeah, excuse my French. So yes, we're going to make something cool like that. My advice is don't make a mess. Like this, good God, this is bad. Because it's basically, you just got to start, I have no idea where to begin with this. Something that's a bit more constrained, so something like this is actually a bit more manageable, because you can actually trace objects from standing, to walking, to run, to then like sliding, and then like ducking and stuff like that. You can actually handle it a bit more. Avoid spiderwebs. Spiderwebs are horrible. Do more like scaffolding or something like that. I've worked on projects and I looked at this and I had to change all of it. It was not fun. Well, you can make a pentagram. Yeah, it's really recent. So we're going to make those, so it's a bit terrifying at first. I first saw it and just instantly closed the window because I was like, God, where do I begin with this? So we're going to make the most simple node-based animation system of all time. We're going to have one clip which is rocket flying, one clip which is rocket exploding, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a pathway to say rocket flying, then when it hits an asteroid, transition, rocket explode, at the end of rocket explode, remove the rocket from the scene. So it's like 1-to-1. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a teddy bear who's doing backflips, waving and doing a backflip at the same time. Iron Man running around in the scene, shooting things, flying, and stuff like that. So I'm going to show more complex ones tomorrow, but today we're just going to do simple enough. And then, for example, you can then take it further. You can have an animation clip of flying, you can have an animation clip of the rocket spiraling out of control, animation clip for the rocket glowing red when like setting off an alarm or something. So you can actually do lots of really cool stuff. Cool. Is that okay with everyone? People are either like, whoa, mind blown, cool, or like, what? Yeah. Yes. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to have a teddy bear running around doing cool stuff. That's not teddy. Okay, easy. So what we have here is, on our rocket, you'll notice that we have an animator with a rocket controller. So we need to have a look at this animator to see what it looks like. So this is really easy to do. Go to Window, in the top corner. You notice in Window we have some things we already have. For example, we already have an inspector, we already have a scene view, game view. With Unity, you can customize the editor to be like, if you're an artist, to target art, or if you're like a programmer, to target programming and debugging and stuff like that. And here we have two options. We have animation and animator. So animator is all the background bits and pieces, like that node-based system. Animation is when we actually do the cool stuff, the animation stuff. So I'm going to go for the animator first, so select animator, and we'll then have a window that we can place. So I have my animator here. I'm going to place my animator. Basically, you can drag the top area and then move it around. So I'm going to place my animator here. So we've got it here. So yeah, so the rocket. And what we have here is we have our node-based system. So it doesn't look so terrifying anymore. So for example, it's not as complex as this mess, this absolute car crash. It's actually a lot simpler. So we have one node clip, because we've got one animation. And this will play automatically. The cool thing with this is you can actually see it animating in real time. So as our rocket's flying, we can actually see this looping and going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then when we transition to something else, we can actually see it going down the path and then play the other one. So you can actually see where it can track where it's going, which is quite cool. It's orange because that's the only one there. And that's kind of like the start. So we've got rocket flying. So we're going to add another clip to this later on when we get around to actually blowing some stuff up, which is cool. But for the time being, I'm going to do rocket flying. So what we need to do now is we now need to animate the rocket. So if you go to Window, go to Animation, you should have the second window. So we have the animator. So if I bring this up, so you've got the animator here, which is your background. It's all your background stuff that's happening with your rocket. Animation is where you do all your keyframing, where you actually do all your animation bits and pieces. You have the background bit and the front visual fun bit. So bring up the animation window. So you'll notice you have it there. I'm just going to move my project folder over here. Select the rocket. And what you'll notice is that as soon as you select the rocket, the animation window will show you the clip that you're targeting. So this will have like a big list of like idle, jump, run, explode and stuff like that. And it will show you this sort of keyframe system. So put your hand up if you've done some animation in like Flash or like After Effects or like Scratch or whatever. Can you even animate in Scratch? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So how Unity works with this animation window is it used to be really, really boring and crap, right? So it used to be like you could only animate, say like you have this bottle, you could only animate it going like moving position, up, down. I mean, if you have a platform, then that's cool. You could animate it rotating, like on the spot, or rotating all around. You can animate it scaling. That was basically it, right? You could animate like that and maybe one or two other things. So what our 2D team did is they said, that's the thing, we want to be able to animate the color changing over time. We want to animate, for example, the audio increasing or decreasing. We want to animate basically anything you want. We want to animate if the sound echoes. So what they did is they basically made the animation window, stripped out a load of it, and basically made it nice and simple to actually, so you can animate whatever you want, which is cool. You can even animate a variable on a script. So you know that force that basically like is set at like 6.6 or whatever it is. You can actually animate that increasing over time and then decreasing over time. So yeah, cool. So what we have here is we have a shelf of rocket sprite, And we also have a play button. So you can click play, and basically it will go through. So you'll notice that it's playing. So you notice that the flame is kind of like going back and forth. Okay, so you have a little play button. So you can actually preview what your animation looks like without playing in the game. So I can drag my playhead to a certain point, and I want it flying. This could be okay, but really, I don't really have any idea what it's doing. So what you need to do is you need to look at how it's animating in the inspector. So what you can do is you can click the record button, just here. So when you click the record button, it will show you in the inspector what it's recording. So for example here, rocket_7. So if I now play my animation, you'll notice that it's actually looping through. It's actually taking the sprite, swapping out, taking the sprite, swapping out, taking the sprite, swapping out, swapping out, swapping out, swapping out. Basically doing that over and over time. Notice the animator's turned on for some reason, I don't know why. We have the color here. So what we can do is if we animate the color over time, it's going to basically change that color swap to be red. Cool. So we have our rocket flying. Nice. But I want it to do other stuff. So I'm going to show you guys how to animate the rocket, make it do flips, make it basically move in position and stuff like that, how to change its color, rescale it, resize it and stuff. Then you guys can have a go with playing around the animator and like the animation system and moving around. Then we're going to like spawn hunt. Then we're going to write a little bit of code, spawn thousands of them, have a 5-minute tiny micro break, and maybe Red Bull will come back, I'm not sure. Yeah. Is everyone like jacked up on Red Bull now? No response means everyone's like wide-eyed, like, Red Bull? Yeah, cool. So yeah, we have our rocket, and we want to animate the rocket. Cool. So what you can see here is we have a shelf. So the way that the shelves work is they show you what you're animating. So here, you're animating the rocket, animating the sprite of the rocket. We need to add some extra shelves. So you can click Add Curve. What you'll notice here is a drop-down list. And this drop-down list, can anyone tell me why this drop-down list is special? I'll give you a hint. It's exactly all the components on your item. So if we add a component of wind zone, you can animate wind zone. If you add a component of audio, you can animate audio. If you add a component of explosion, you can have like the explosion animated over time and do some cool stuff. So just to prove like what I'm saying is it doesn't makes actual sense. We have here transform sprite render animator. Oh, what's on the rocket? Transform sprite render animator. So if I then, for example, like added a component of like audio source, so I've now got a source on my rocket to play some audio, so it's like a jukebox. 10 points. Who can guess what's been added to the list? Audio source, hooray! So then we can open up these things. So if you open up transform, if you open up transform, you have all the position, rotation, scale, it's all boring stuff. If you open up sprite renderer, you can animate whether it casts shadows or not over time. Like, when would you need that? You can animate, for example, if pixel snaps or not. You can animate if it receives shadows, animate light probes. You can animate the color, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my rocket turn into like a rainbow rocket or something. If you go to the audio source, you can animate if it loops or not. You can animate if it goes mute. So you can have a point where your rocket's flying, and then when, like, as it explodes, it basically mutes all that audio and it like increases the volume of the rocket. Then all the other audio fades back in and stuff. You can do really cool stuff like that. So yeah, so you basically choose what you want to animate. I'm going to say, let's animate the color. So sprite renderer, color, and what you'll notice is it's added on a shelf. So it's added a shelf for the sprite and a shelf for the sprite renderer. So it only shows you what you're actually animating. And as you add like position, rotation, scale, like audio, volume, and stuff like that, it then adds it up. The previous audio window was just like everything was already there, and I got very scared of it and had nightmares. So yeah, so what you'll notice is that we now animate the sprite renderer. So before I animate, there's one thing I forgot to point out, and that is we have a sample rate as well. The sample rate defines how many frames a second it's going to go. So currently it's going to run at 12 frames a second for this particular object. Okay, so it's just going to follow that, right? So that, I mean, that's okay. So let's say the Red Bull girls came back and they said, actually, let's pour some Red Bull into the rocket. You can change the sample rate from 12 frames a second, 60 frames a second, super rocket, and it's flying. Awesome. So this isn't dependent on like the whole scene of the game. It's basically just on this animation. So for example, I could say, or if I wanted to do like a Chariots of Fire style rocket, 4 frames a second. Name, yeah. Just when you went. Although 12 is kind of like, yeah. Okay. So what number should we use? I had 28 for like 42. 42. 47. You really no. 1,000. It's so fast. It's looping through 8 frames so fast. Like, oh wow. Hang on. Let's see. It's not a crash. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, let's be more realistic. Yeah, cool. Thanks. So, can anyone point out why this would be useful that you can change the sample rate of object's animation? Before I bitch about Skyrim.
You can change the speed of how you
Fantastic, absolutely. So, put your hand up if you've played Skyrim. So, you have dragons. Yeah. It's a pretty cool game, but like the thing was like you walk through a village. There's an old lady like, walking and hobbling along. And then she like says, "Oh, old lady, could you do a quest where you carry like my groceries, even though you're like supposed to be saving the land, so carry my groceries?" I'm like, okay, you're on this, okay. And then a dragon flies over, and then she just drops her stuff and just legs it. Like, she just suddenly like basically they didn't scale like the animation. They used the same animation for pretty much all the characters. So an old lady would just like dragon and then just like leg it to like a house, absolutely sprint it, or she'd run up to the dragon, start fighting it like really fast. Which kind of breaks your like, what's it? Like breaks your concentration. It breaks the reality of the game. I know there's dragons in it, but like forget that bit. So it kind of breaks. I mean, it's an old lady. You don't expect an old lady to just leg it to a house or just run, sprint up to a dragon and just punch a dragon in the face. That doesn't make any sense. I would expect an old lady to perhaps hobble, like run, but like slowly, walk slowly back to a house. Like, there's a model for that. There's a model for that. That does not surprise me. There's a model for that. So what you could do is you could, for example, like I'll do it with the teddy bear tomorrow. Is that you could then write a script that basically says this is an old lady. Set the sample rate instead of 18 to perhaps like 12. So animation is slightly a bit slower, right? Or you could then say the old lady has had her bull, or like she's had like you can then have her actually like animating up. So yeah, Skyrim, I mean it was nice, but like that kind of ruined it. That happened like the first one, like it's like first half an hour of the game, like an old lady just sprinting at a dragon, punching it, and I was like, wow. So yeah, so you can change the sample rate. You can change that by script. You can tweak it by script to say, if it's an old lady, have a slower sample rate for the animation. If it's a guy, just leg it at the dragon. So yeah, you can change the sample rate. So, okay, slight detour. So I'll do some animation stuff. And then we'll take like a chance for you guys to play around with it, get a little breather and stuff, and then we'll go into the final stretches. So we have here the sprite renderer. So what you can do is we can open up the sprite renderer shelf, and inside the shelf here, we can then animate the RGB values over time. So the RGB value is for green. No, okay. But someone actually shout it out. 0 to 56, 0. Okay, 255. Probably. Okay, 0. Oh wow, good crap. Okay, what about the colourful maroon? Okay, so what you could do is you could be kind of like a bit lame and just like Google like the RGB values, or because we have this nicely sexy inspector with all the information, you can just change the value here and set it to a new colour. So what we can do is we can this is sort of how the animation process works. Make sure record button's recording. Add your curve, so we're going to add to the sprite renderer. Let's say halfway through the animation, so I'm going to drag it to like there. That sounds cool. Okay, so like we're going to set it to there. Then what you can do is then you can then go, okay, let's animate the color. So someone pick a color for my rocket to turn into. Anyone know any purpose? Purple. Most people say pink. Yeah. So normally when people like don't know any colors, which people are like, wait, you must pick a color? What? I gave a similar talk in Sweden. I was like, someone pick a color, and it was 9 AM, and it was in a rock bar. Microsoft organised this, that's why it was in a rock bar. It's a long story, and it was 9 AM, and basically there's a random dude at the back who had like this big guy with tattoos, he had like denim cut-offs and a mohawk, and he just goes, punk. So everyone in the bar was like he wasn't part of the talk, so I don't know why it was in the bar. Everyone likes us now, but yeah, basically, yeah, like everyone was like really perplexed, like it's early, he's asking us to pick a colour. The guy at the back who was already drinking whiskey, and I was like, as long as you don't hurt me, I'll choose pink. So now I use pink just in case he's lurking in the corner, like, I'm going to get you. So purple, cool. Wow, okay, that's pretty good. So one thing you'll notice is that keyframing auto-tweens between one value and another. So you can see the RGB values are currently 1 to 1, and as okay, 0.3655, blah, 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 blah. And you can actually notice that it's actually animating through. So let's add another keyframe somewhere. So I'm going to say, okay, it goes straight from white to purple. Let's say halfway between purple back to white, the last keyframe. Someone pick another colour. Yellow. I was so waiting for someone to go pink. Okay, just go. Cool. So yeah, so there's basically auto-tweening between these different values. So what you can do is you can then go add curve, let's add another shelf, and so on and so forth. So you could do that. However, that's a bit dull. It's a bit dull going add curve, add this, add this. So what we've done is kind of been very sneaky and then auto keyframing if you change something in the inspector. So if, for example, I select my rocket, and let's say halfway through the animation, okay, let's say the end of the animation, I want my rocket to be upside down. Whoa, it's already added position, because it technically changes position a bit, and rotation already. Wow, okay, cool. So what we can do here is we'll actually see. So then if I said like, let's say here, rocket gets huge. That looks like a mess. So say like I did something, so I said, okay, let's make my rocket massive, and that looks like complete utter nonsense. Okay, so say like I added a shelf. So I've got my rocket, and I've got my shelf, I've got my shelf for position, rotation, scale, color, stripe. I say, actually the scale looks a bit silly, right? Hit backspace and basically take off the shelf. So you kind of add to the shelf and take away the shelf. You got a question?
Will that bring it back to the same original shape? Can we copy and paste and move us the phrase to bring it back to the original state? So it looks like a smooth animation.
Yeah, okay. I'm just about to talk about that. Okay, cool, no worries. Okay, so see like I've got rotation here. So kind of my rocket goes. Okay, let's get rid of that. Sometimes the auto recording of animation is a sin because like you accidentally move it and then it like offsets and yeah. Oh well. Okay, let's say that at this point in my animation, okay, I want my rocket to do like a 180 flip. So I want at the start it to be facing up, the bottom to facing down. So currently it does that linearly, right? It just does down, down. What if I wanted to ease in and out? So if I'm kind of like this, and then it speeds up so we have a curve as opposed to a straight line. Obviously there's dope sheets. So some of you animators are probably looking at this like, what the hell? Like, why is there no curves? Why can't I do anything? Why? Well, basically what our 2D devs did is instead of just say you could only use a dope sheet on curves, you can actually toggle them at any point. So So what you can notice at the bottom and the animation window, dope sheet, dope sheet, curves, curves. So if we go to the curves, what you can notice. So what you'll notice is if I go to the dope sheet, it will show you basically all these keyframes of these exact points. If I go to, yeah. Okay, so if we go to the dope sheet, it shows you all the points. It basically shows you the exact data moments that it's going to be at certain values. If I go to curves, cool. Let's look at the rotation. So I've selected the rotation shelf. Let's look at the rotation for around the z-axis. There's my animation for z. This is just kind of going straight. So what I can do is I can actually go to these keyframe points and then I can set them to be like free smooth and broken, and my cursor is massive, yay, cool. So then I can actually like animate the curves and I can say, actually, have like a nice ease in bringing this out. You can copy and paste the keyframes, so I could like say, I could have, for example, like this bit here and then like select the keyframes, copy them. Okay, yeah, all these are double checked. You should. I know you can. I know you can copy the dope sheet, so I can like go here and go that's one and this one. My cursor's too big. Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, rotation set. So now, rather than it being so linear, it's now. So yeah, it's flicking around. There's lots of sound effects. Cool. So we have this animator. So what we want you guys to do is, those of you with machines, have a go for the next 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Try animating, try flipping, try animating different properties, try animating different things about the rocket, make it phase through the colours of the rainbow, I don't really care. Just play around with it, move around different sort of like different things. Next 5 or so minutes. Then after we've done that, then we're going to add a collider onto it, then we're going to duplicate it like 1 billion times, and then we're going to create some astro targets and then blow them up. So yeah, so try animating, try playing around with this animation window, because it's kind of a little bit fiddly, but you can still play around and do lots of really exciting stuff with it. You got a question?
Yes, if you want to add effects to more like two parallel elements, if you want to add animations to two parallel elements, would you want one to look while the other one continues? How can you do that? Like, say, you want the rocket to go to shuffle it.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, so you say, for example, like rockets doing that, but it's slowly phasing in the color over time.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you can do that. So the way you can do that is, let's have it so it doesn't flip. Let's say he add curve, transform, position. So that's what we do. Okay. Okay, so he's doing like a little shuffle, like do those couple of keyframes. So what you can do is you can then select the keyframe. Okay, insert the keyframes, copy them, move your playhead to where you want the new set, move your playhead to where you want the new set. So now it's let's move fast. Let's make the brain start. Yeah, let's make rocket get red. Are you talking about that?
Yes.
Yeah. So you just create like the first, so it's the first 3, and then in the dope sheet, you can hold shift and select multiple keyframes, and then copy and paste. Move the playhead and copy and paste where they're going to go. I know that's not really like a silver bullet type thing. I know they were thinking about at one point having like next to position, like do you want to loop it, ping pong it, like single play button. But they're toying with that. Maybe they'll do that. I'm not sure. But currently, people are happy with copy and paste. it's like the universal thing that everyone does, especially HTML. Cool. Right, okay, so yeah, if you have to go, like animating the rocket, making it shuffle, making it like do a backflip, whatever, yeah, we'll go with that. Or like have cookies, if there's more cookies, but like feedback can provide this time. Go for it.
The animation that was completed, does it apply
So the glider should sit with the animation like, yeah, hang on. I'm going to do glider steps. So we'll test that. The trouble is when we use it, it's like bits and pieces, where it's like, I guess it's a problem with everything. Yeah, it should like, the glider should be position, like,